This is my response to Livelife8072. So he did a video response to the Phil Anselmo edit that Atheism is Unstoppable was doing. I'll leave that up to AIU. He can definitely defend himself. So I don't need to defend him. He's perfectly capable of defending himself there. The things that I'm going to address in this video is how Joe is addressing Phil Anselmo's supposed racist actions.
Hey everybody, what's going on? So did you know that Devin Tracy, AIU, just had an interview yesterday with Phil Anselmo, the lead singer of Pantera? Now apparently Devin doesn't know the history of this guy. Don't know how he didn't do any inquiry on the guy, but people call him out as a racist. Nazi salutes, white power. I guess he didn't research back in 2016 where he was on stage given the Nazi salutes, right? People claim that he is a white supremacist, a Nazi, a neo-Nazi.
So Joe, this particular incident that you're referring to took place on January 22nd of 2016, and it was a benefit concert, and this is from the article. When the topic comes up, a pal comes over the room. Anselmo says, true to his word, not apologizing again when talking to Rolling Stone, but he says in a voice that's deeper and louder than earlier, what I did, I own it outright. He also repeats a story he told Decibel that fans in the front row at the concert had been calling him a racist, trying to get a rise out of me. So he reacted, you want to see ugly? I'll show you what ugly looks like. He remembers thinking, and I did, and I paid for it, and I continually paid for it, but it's the farthest thing from the fucking truth. He apparently had some fans who were sort of egging him on, coupled with his drunken state, anger at his fans. I know I've seen a lot of fans get into arguments with people, even outright fights. So he said, yeah, all right, fuck it. I'll give you exactly what you want to see, not thinking about the repercussions and all the people who were filming it. He recognizes that it was wrong. He also apologized for it. Yeah, I know that people do change, Joe. People do grow up. Their opinions do change, and their outlooks and opinions about things do change. He's apologized for it, he understands it was wrong, and he's trying to move on.
But Devin doesn't realize that people are claiming, or have claimed since last year, actually years ago, that Phil Anselmo is a fucking racist. Racist.
As I had mentioned earlier, Joe, people do change. I happen to know someone who was a actual Nazi skinhead, who was proud to be a Nazi and a skinhead back in the early middle 80s in San Francisco. Now, this man changed. He completely changed his opinion about things. He's no longer a Nazi. He's not a racist. He grew out of that, and he changed, and he feels bad about the way that he acted, and his opinion about a lot of other things in his life have changed, and he's a new person today. People do make mistakes. They do say stupid things, and they do regret them, and they do change and become different people. I'm going to take Phil Anselmo's word that he was reacting to someone in the audience. He was drunk and he said something stupid that he later regret. I'm going to take his word for that, and I'm going to also accept his apology and accept the fact that he is trying to move on with his life and put that behind him. If you can't do that, that's your problem. It's no longer his problem. This is now your problem.
And a few things about Phil that Devin might not know about is that Phil was a heroin addict, a pill popper, an alcoholic, still is an alcoholic. All right, this guy was a big loser back in the day.
So, Joe, I like you. I think you're a nice guy. I enjoy watching your content, and so I'm going to be brutally honest with you. You're kind of a fucking asshole right now. You claim to have known people who have dealt with drug addiction in the past, so you must know that many people who deal with drug addiction wrestle with it. Sometimes people, on the very first time, they get clean and they're completely abstinent from it and they move on with their life. Other people might go down the harm reduction path and then try to manage their addiction. Either way, they can go through various stages where they fall off the wagon and then they get back on the wagon. They fall off the wagon, they get back on the wagon. It can be very difficult and it can be very demoralizing to deal with drug addiction.
Successful when it came to his music. I love Pantera. I still listen to their music to this day. And yes, Devin, you asked me on a live show, which is on my channel. Yes, I did meet Phil in 1997 at the Electric Factory in Philadelphia. Said hi to him, a couple questions. He answered them. Good guy, nice guy. I also met him in, I think, 2001 at the First Union Center in Philadelphia. Nice guy, met him backstage. I had all access, like I normally do. Is that okay for me to say that? Is that me virtue signaling? Because I used to be in the music industry for 15 years. I had my own production company. I booked a lot of these bands. But they don't like that. They don't like when Joe comes out and states all the people he has interviewed in the past. You know, people like Lawrence Krauss told people I had his phone number. I used to bring fucking Lawrence Krauss on my shows at last second just to say hi to him, see how he was doing, especially before the Reason Rally. But you know what? People have a problem with that. Oh, Joe's name dropping. But when people like Billy and Devin name drop, say, oh my God, I met Phil Anselmo. Oh my God, New York City. Oh my God, he makes a video about it, Billy. Oh my God, I make a comment like this. Oh my God, who fucking cares? You met Phil Anselmo. Who cares? Get the obvious double standard? Yes, this is a truthful statement. So these people on that side, the ex-flying monkeys, those douchebags, and then we have people like Andy Worski claiming on one of his live shows recently.
Joe, right now you sound a little jealous, you sound a little envious. I think people make fun of you name dropping because they recognize it as sort of you're stroking your own ego. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with stroking your own ego. We all do it. We all stroke our own egos and, puff it up whenever we can name drop or say, hey, they know somebody famous or whatever. There's nothing wrong with puffing up your ego a little bit. I happen to know some people back in the day who now became rather famous. Of course, they never talk to me anymore. But still, I knew them at one time. I can name drop also. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think people were just they were yanking your chain. They were making fun of you a little bit. These are all virtual relationships that we're in online. They're not actual relationships. I don't know. Me personally, I don't have a lot of investments in the relationships that I have with people online. The relationships I do have online, of course, I do value them. But I also understand that they are essentially virtual relationships. I know about as much about anybody online as they really want me to know. As for other aspects of their personality, who knows? For all I know, they could be just really nice psychopaths who, torture kittens in their basement. I don't know.
But people like Devin and his followers call me a fucking drunk when I drink only 2 to 3 times a week.
Well, Joe, most real alcoholics are in denial. And if you drink 2 to 3 times per week, that's kind of a high amount. I'll leave a test below if you want to find out if you're an alcoholic, but the first sign of an alcoholic is denial.
And the one day that I drink a lot is usually when I do a podcast. Fact. I work 60 fucking hours a week. I can't drink every fucking night. Never done drugs in my life.
In all seriousness, Joe, if you do feel like your drinking is interfering with your life or drug use is interfering with your life, there's nothing wrong with seeking help, seeking support for that. Often people will seek support and help even if they're just a little concerned that their drinking or drug use might be a little excessive. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people deal with addiction, and dealing with addiction by yourself it's very, very difficult. If you reach out for help, there's so much help out there. But the first thing you have to do is admit there's a problem and seek the help. And nobody else can do that. I support you, Joe.
But Phil, on the other hand, fucking heroin addict. And like I've always stated to all my friends, in my life, I have witnessed a lot of my friends die because of heroin and meth and cocaine. Once a fucking addict, always an addict. I'm sorry, but that's what I feel. Now, could people, be clean and become straight edge? Of course they can. Of course they can. But it's not likely. So when you see these clips that Devin posted today of his interview, when it comes to Phil cannot finish a coherent sentence. And you know what other people in the community thought in 2016?
Joe, you say that you have known people who have dealt with addiction. You've seen people who have been heroin addicts, meth addicts, cocaine addicts who have died. You know how serious of an illness this can be. That addiction is a very insidious condition to deal with. And people who deal with their addiction straight on and really confront it and deal with it do recover. They might be in an abstinence program and they might be abstinent from a particular drug or a particular addiction for the rest of their life. That's their choice. They can do that. And yes, then they are always an addict, but they understand that and they do recover. The people who go down the harm reduction road, people who try to reduce their addiction, can still use a drug, but they keep it under control so that it doesn't end up controlling them. So there's various methods that people can deal with it. One is they manage their drug addiction, and then the other one is where they become abstinent from it and not use the drug. There are thousands and thousands of people who deal with drug addiction and they do recover from that. I disagree with your statement, Joe. There are people who deal with addictions and they do overcome their addictions, whether they get a control from them or they become completely abstinent from them.
But there's a reason why he wasn't invited to Dimebag Darrell's fucking funeral. There's a fucking reason why. So I'm going to end my rant here. I'm going to play a few clips. And the first one is going to be Devin's promo that he put out last week.
I edited out certain parts of this video that I'm just not going to respond to. If AIU wants to make a response to that, he can do that. I don't need to respond to it here. But I am going to address this issue of Dimebag Darrell. You claim, Joe, that he wasn't invited because people blamed him for the death of Dimebag Darrell. According to an article concerning the death of Dimebag Darrell, a young fan obsessed with heavy metal shot and killed former Pantera guitarist Dimebag Darrell Abbott and 3 other people during a show by Damageplan, Abbott's latest band. The tragedy took place on the evening of December 8th at the El Rosa Villa nightclub in Columbus, Ohio. The shooter, Nathan Gale, 25, was killed by a Columbus police officer minutes after the violence erupted. A stocky former Marine, Gale was reportedly upset that Pantera had broken up last year and may have blamed Abbott for the band's acrimonious split. The other victims were 23-year-old Nathan Bray, Damageplan crew member Jeff Mayhem Thompson, 40, and club employee Aaron A. Hile, 29. Later on, it goes on to say that Nathan Gale, according to people in Marysville, was troubled but not prone to violence. On November the 17th at 3:20 a.m., police arrested Gale for driving with a suspended license. By then, friends told the Columbus Dispatch Gale had changed. He begun talking and laughing to himself. He told a friend that Pantera had stolen his songs and that he was going to sue them. Bender said Gale told him he'd left the Marines due to mental problems, was taking medications, and may have been bipolar. Nathan was infatuated with the guitarist, said Bender. Sounds like he had other issues going on.
There we go. See what I'm talking about? Devin, if it has to do with him, he's all on it, man. He's all over it. It's about him. Nobody else. He doesn't give a fuck about anybody else. I'm sure of that. I'm like, Jesus Christ, he's fucking ousted all his internet friends in the last 2 years, including Autopsy 87, which he had a couple promos promoting his channel. And of course, Drew, I'm not going to speak for him, but he doesn't want nothing to do with Devin anymore. I don't want nothing to do with Devin anymore. And say when Anthony, which got called out for the same reasons that I called Anthony out on, Devin called him out on the same shit. He used people, Anthony. So people like Andy Worski is going to claim like I backstabbed Anthony? Even though he didn't mention any names, I know what he meant because it was so hilarious that Andy Worski had Billy Bong and Anthony on after my guest appearance on Worski Live. Hilarious. Why is that? And you know what the funny thing about that is that they both called me out on his fucking podcast. Hilarious. Do you think they're butthurt? Of course they are. Of course they are. And nobody should take fucking Anthony or Billy Bong serious. Billy Bong makes good videos. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I've stated that in a video calling him out. He makes good videos, but he's a fucking child. A fucking child. And he should be called out for being a child. Amazing.
So, Joe, I'm not going to address this internet drama. Like I said earlier, there are people on YouTube that we're going to get along with, and there's people who we're not getting along with. But they are virtual relationships. We know about as much of what other people want us to know online. We really don't know who they are. They're personas. So various personas on YouTube are going to get along, and others aren't going to get along. They're virtual relationships. And so I'm not going to get into all of this, but I did want to address it because you had mentioned it in the video. And you accuse Billy Bong of being a child, but you don't say why. You don't give any examples. You don't explain this. So I'm just going to chalk this up to your opinion, and I disagree with your opinion.
Okay, you're learning, but you should have did a little research on his past. And I don't know if you question him on his past with his heroin and pill popping addiction. Supposedly he's been clean for 8 years. Good for Phil if that is the case. Good job, Phil. Excellent.
As someone who sets up interviews occasionally and also sets up questions that I usually send to people before the interview, there's many reasons why Devin may not have wanted to address the issue of drug use. One, maybe it's something that they agreed upon not talking about. Maybe it's something that he chose not to talk about. Or maybe it's also a topic he just didn't feel was relevant. Whatever the reason is, it wasn't brought up. So the only reason why you're bringing up, I can assume, is just so you can disparage this gentleman, this Phil Anselmo, that you would bring something up like this is to somehow shed some kind of negative light on him. And I don't understand why you are doing that. The only thing I can think of is you must have some kind of personal vendetta against this man.
But are you going to question him on that? Are you going to question him on why he was disinvited? He wasn't invited to Dimebag Darrell's fucking funeral. Why? Because they blamed Phil for it, for his murder. Now, were there drugs involved? I don't know. There's some speculation out there of it.
Joe, AIU already had a video that he had made where he was asking suggestions from people, questions to ask Phil Anselmo during the interview. If there were specific questions that you wanted AIU to ask Phil Anselmo, you should have submitted those to AIU before the interview, not after the interview. And if you did submit those questions and AIU didn't ask them, well, there's probably good reason why he didn't ask those particular questions. Now, as for people blaming Phil Anselmo for the actions of another individual, this person, Nathan Gale, was displaying bipolar symptoms. He claims that he was taking medication. He was discharged from the military. The facts are that he appears to have been dealing with a mental illness and blamed Dimebag Darrell for the breakup of Pantera, and that he may have had other issues going on. So yes, we could speculate and we could do conspiracy theories and we could get all kinds of opinions and ideas of what may have led up to it or what caused it or whatever. But the facts of the matter is that he acted upon this and he committed these murders. He was killed in cold blood, and unfortunately Dimebag Darrell is no longer with us. Those are the facts, Joe. Everything else is speculation, and it really doesn't need to be introduced into a video unless you're just trying to, again, disparage and throw shade upon Phil Anselmo for whatever vindictive personal reasons you have.
Yeah, you didn't release it. It's fucking Wednesday now. When this video comes out, it's going to be Wednesday. And you know what you told people in your live broadcast? I don't know, guys. It's going to take me a long time to edit. It's going to be days before I even get this done. Weeks, maybe. I don't even know. Why don't you just release the whole fucking interview? Uncut. The full interview
Because the interview is almost 3 hours long. That's why, Joe. Also, I've done interviews in the past, and sometimes what we will do is we'll do the interview over Skype, and we'll agree upon which parts I'm actually going to publish, and if there are certain parts that they misspoke, or they said something they shouldn't have said, or there was a correction that needed to be done, and then I would finish the editing and send it to them. They could view it for themselves, and then approve it. Once it's approved, then I would release it. Not very many people want to sit down and listen to a 3-hour-long interview. Some people might, but, not everybody does. And oftentimes, there's just kind of dead air, dead space, or mistakes, or all kinds of various things that need to be edited out, such as syncing up the audio and all. There's various reasons why he would choose to edit and release the video at a later time. And in this particular case, it seems like there was a lot of editing that he needed to do. Knowing how much of a perfectionist Devin is, he probably did not want to release it half-ass. He wanted to go through, tweak it, and make it really good.
So let me bring up something that happened last year. Phil Anselmo tells Down, which is his group, which was a band that he was a singer of in 2016. He tells Down to move on without him after Nazi salute. Well, do you want to see what he did on stage? Well, of course, let me play the video.
Yo, Don Bash, thanks for coming out tonight, Lucky Strike Live. It's been a pleasure having all of you here and all the awesome musicians. Ronnie James Dio, stand up and shout.
Now, some people might just say, hey, Joe, you just throw up a Nazi salute. But a lot of people in the YouTube community at the time had a problem with it. They called him out on it vehemently. They fucking said, listen, what Phil did was just fucking uncalled for. And this ain't the first time Phil has been noted as a fucking racist.
Joe, this is your main talking point. This is your golden egg in this whole thing. This is the only thing you can really keep bringing up. So you brought it up several times in this video. And also, you played this clip for the second time. So Phil Anselmo apologized and regrets his actions in January of 2016. He not only apologized for it, he apologized a second time and a third time. He regrets his actions. He feels bad, and he apologized for it several times, and he wants to move on. If other people don't accept his apology at this point, it's no longer on him, it's on them. And as I had mentioned earlier, people do change. People regret their actions, they change, and they move on. So at this point, Joe, this is on you. If you don't feel he's apologized enough, if you feel like he should apologize 100 times or 50 times, just put a number out there and contact Phil and say, hey, Phil, I'll forgive you after you apologize and say that you regret your actions after you do it 20 times or 30 times. 30 apologies, and then you'll accept. It's on you, Joe. It's no longer on him. It's now on you.
And what I want to go back to is Phil's statement. I think this is from Rolling Stone, this article. Down singer Phil Anselmo has recommended his bandmates move on without him following an incident at this year's Dime Bash where Anselmo said white power and made the Nazi salute on stage. Since the Dime Bash performance, the same gig where Anselmo teamed with Dave Grohl and Metallica's Robert Trujillo to pay tribute to Lemmy. The former Pantera singer has apologized for his actions, and I accept his apology, no doubt. I think many would. I think he just needs to explain his, I guess you can say, racism. But that didn't prevent the band from being pulled from Netherlands Forte Rock events over Anselmo's remarks. And of course, Anselmo here states, quote, I am utterly responsible for the mistakes I have made and can only give you my word to no longer do them in the present through action, not just mere words. He continues here, quote, my bandmates are now experiencing the consequences of my behavior, and I now publicly apologize to them as well. Never in my entire lifetime would I drag them down with me, and I've privately suggested to them that they move on without me.
Joe, you accept his apology, but now you want him to explain his actions? So whatever he's done is just not good enough in your eyes. He's apologized several times. He's taken responsibility for it, and he regrets his actions, and he's made several public statements. But that's not good enough for you, Joe. No, you want him to go through and tediously explain and break down all of the various mental processes that lead up to this, or some kind of imaginary thought process that isn't actually happening inside of his mind. And then once he's actually explained this thought process to you, then maybe you'll forgive him and let him move on with his life. You are an awfully big man, Joe. So again, I don't know what your problem is with Phil Anselmo. I don't understand where this vindictive, vengeful nature of yours is coming from, but it's ugly. And if anything, you need to be making an apology to Phil Anselmo.